Brethren, here we are on the eve, or almost, of Christmas 2020, and I doubt that in the 300 years or so since the formation of Grand Lodge, Freemasonry has experienced a festive period such as this. But over the centuries, we have been a resilient lot, and one thing is certain: Freemasonry is not just for Christmas. And here is a story to prove it. It was late afternoon on Christmas Eve, and the Provincial Grand Secretary was sat at his desk, hoping that the Provincial Grand Master, who was soon to be socially distanced from him, would soon complete his study of the end-of-year membership figures so the office could be closed and everyone could go home to their families. It's been grey all day and had echoes of a famous, or perhaps infamous, Christmas Eve from a Dickensian London. There were 3 loud knocks on the office door, and the PGM looked up and said, "I wonder who that is." This startled the Provincial Grand Secretary, who turned from his computer and said, "What did you say, PGM?" "Did you not hear the knocking?" said the PGM. "No," came the reply. As he sat there, the PGM saw a large man materialise before him. "Who on earth are you?" said the PGM to the visitor, who was in full Masonic attire, including a gleaming PGM's chain and what appeared to the PGM to be a larger than usual PGM's apron, with gold adornments so bright they were dazzling. "I am the ghost of Provincial Past," said the stranger with a beaming smile, "and I am here to show you why I am so cheerful." In an instant, the PGM and his spectral guide were in an ornate Masonic dining room, and it was a very busy place. "Which lodge is this?" inquired our increasingly confused PGM. "It is the festive board for the December meeting of the Lodge of Growth, and we have gone back to the middle of the last century. There are about 120 brethren enjoying the turkey and Christmas pud." On the Worshipful Master's right was a young face which had the hint of a look of bewilderment. Doubtless this fresh-faced individual had been initiated into the lodge that evening. To the right of the lodge's newest member was an array of Freemasons, who from their appearance and mannerisms had more than a few years' experience of their lodge's after proceedings, and were all enjoying their cigars. With a snap of his finger, the ghost moved the PGM on in time to the end of the festive board, which by now had become very boisterous. The PGM was about to ask why he was still there, when the Director of Ceremonies, in a manner which suggested that he was used to being listened to, called for the brethren's attention, for the Worshipful Master, who was to make some closing remarks. The Worshipful Master thanked the brethren for their gusto during the carol singing, but said he felt that there was room for improvement, in some cases, and particularly on the senior Worms leg. He then advised the brethren that whilst 230 places had already been reserved for the ladies' evening, he was hoping that a few more would wish to join him and his lady for what was sure to be another excellent occasion. He reminded brethren that the ladies' evening, as the key social event of the year, offered the opportunity to introduce prospective candidates. The Master then said that information on travel arrangements to London for the finale of the Province's Festival on behalf of the Royal Masonic Benevolent Institution would be issued to all brethren in the next few weeks, and that there would be at least one special train operated by British Rail to take members to the capital. "How things have changed," said the PGM, and at which the ghost, who had maintained a cheery countenance throughout, nodded and said, "This is a glorious time for Freemasonry. However, it has to be hoped that no one will take continuing success for granted." With a wave of his hand, The PGM found himself back in his chair in the office. He glanced at the Provincial Grand Secretary, who was still tapping away on his keyboard, and appeared oblivious to the PGM's time-travelling experience. The PGM was just about to ask the Provincial Secretary, who, as you all know, is privy to all things, what was going on, when there were 3 knocks on the door. In an instant, the PGM was confronted by another large apron and chain, and although the ghost again had an engaging smile, the overall appearance was not as overpowering as the previous visitor. The PGM looked across at his secretary, but there was not a flicker. "I suppose you are the ghost of Provincial Present," said the PGM. "How perceptive," came the response. And with a nod of the spirit's head, the PGM found himself in a small study, standing behind a middle-aged man who was sitting at a desk and looking at a screen showing about a dozen faces. "I know what this is," commented the PGM. "It's a Zoom meeting." "Again, you show your wisdom," said the ghost of Provincial Present in his finest sarcastic tone. "However, you are now standing behind the Secretary of the Lodge of Challenge." "Good evening, brethren," said the Secretary to the assembled images. "I note the usual suspects gathered again, and it is good to see you all looking so well. Zoom has been a major blessing for Freemasonry during the awful pandemic," whispered the PGM. "So you think that this scene represents the life and times of your province, do you?" enquired the spirit. The PGM was about to comment on how difficult it was for a lodge's membership to have face-to-face contact during these times of lockdown, when the spirit raised his hand and said, "Let's listen in." "Brethren, an update on where we are as a lodge," said the secretary. 3 senior members have confirmed that they will not attend any meetings until they have received a vaccine. Sadly, we have received 2 resignations, both from new members who have been made redundant and feel that they have other priorities for their reduced income. We are trying to ensure that they leave in good standing, so that hopefully they can return when their situation improves. Worshipful Master, over to you." "Thank you, Brother Secretary," said a participant on the bottom row of faces. "As you know, we cannot hold our planned Christmas meeting due to the suspension. It would have been the same as usual, with a very short business meeting to be followed by a white table at which our spouses and friends could join us. We would have had about 60 dining, and it would have been a very good evening. I was so much looking forward to the raffle to win one of those bottles of wine which have appeared at this raffle over the past 3 years. It is unfortunate that we cannot raise a few quid, but if anyone wishes to make a contribution, then the lodge's charity steward will be pleased to receive your donation. The Secretary will be distributing the latest provincial newsletter tomorrow, and I would ask that you read it before you press the delete button on your keyboard. Some good news, brethren. We have a candidate, and we would look to carry out an initiation as soon as we can meet with a decent number and can perform the ceremony with which we are all familiar." At this, the ghost turned to the PGM and said, "Not really pushing the boundaries, are we? Other than getting some brethren familiar with modern technology. This is a lodge with nearly 40 members, but only about a quarter can be bothered to join this online meeting. Do you think the previous spectre may have had a point when he told you not to take things for granted?" "You are being overcritical," said the PGM. "No one is going to pretend that Freemasonry is as it was 40 or 50 years ago. But there are many in this province who continue to work hard to make sure that good men are brought into an organisation which has principles of integrity, honesty and friendship at its heart. I have seen the principle of charity in its fullest glory, from the support the brethren and their lodges have given to the severely disadvantaged during these dark times, and I am proud to be one of them. Fine words, and I admit some very kind actions, but is there a foundation for a solid future? Questioned the ghost. Surely not, if we are relying on a digital gathering rather than one where bonds of friendship can be strengthened through good ritual and, of course, the spirit created by the festive board. Talking of spirit, I think I've had enough of your negativity. Take me back to the office and be gone, said the PGM, and in that same instant he was back in his chair in the provincial office. "Oh, I'm not going to have some apparition criticising the brethren of this province," spouted the PGM, which came as a bit of a surprise to the provincial Grand Secretary, who was just thinking about whether or not it was worthwhile getting another coffee. "I'm sorry, PGM. I didn't see any criticism in the membership report. I will have a word with the provincial registrar." No, that's fine. I was just thinking out loud. I will soon be finished here." This is really strange, thought the PGM. Perhaps I shouldn't have had the brandy sauce with that Christmas pud at lunchtime. Now then, thought the PGM, another ghost is due. So to whoever is controlling this little lot, I say, let's get on with it. So it was no surprise that the next thing to interrupt the silence in the provincial office were 3 loud knocks. Again the PGM glanced across at the provincial secretary, but in keeping with this strange time, there was no movement. Before the PGM could sit back in his chair, he was confronted by a very young-looking and very well-turned-out individual wearing a pristine entered apprentice's apron. "I suppose you are the ghost of provincial future," said a much less phased PGM. "Well, actually, I am Brother Tim Small, and I suppose that in terms of your learning curve, I am representing the future." The PGM stifled a splutter and chose not to ask this young whippersnapper who he thought he was talking to in referring to a learning curve such a long-serving Freemason. "You are part of the university scheme, then?" inquired the PGM, who was really wondering if this youth was actually old enough to join. "Yes, and I am happy to say I am a member of a very vibrant lodge, and in due time I am looking to be exalted into this province's university scheme chapter. Mind you, with a total of 80,000 as a student population, it would be a poor do if we couldn't find good young men who believe in the principles of our fraternity." Seems like things have progressed somewhat, thought the PGM. There was something about the attitude of this EA which made the PGM think it would be well worthwhile finding out a little more. "What is that in your hand?" inquired the PGM. "It's a copy of the current yearbook," came the reply. "I am a little surprised that it still exists in hard copy, but it seems a little thinner than what I am used to." "Well," said Brother Small, "for some reason the brethren of this province like a hard copy, because they can use it as the mood takes them without having to log on through their phone, tablet or similar. It's thinner because there are fewer brethren, fewer lodges and also other Masonic units, and much less advertising as businesses deal with their marketing online." These comments made the PGM begin to ponder about what he was apparently going to see, but before he could ask the obvious question, the ghost said, "OK, let's get back to the future." "Have you got a DeLorean then?" said the PGM at his wittiest. "If not, I know a Derbyshire Freemason who can assist." This quip was clearly wasted on this young spirit, who was evidently becoming impatient. "Let's go," uttered the phantom as he stepped off on his left foot. Instantly the PGM found himself in an unfamiliar but clearly Masonic setting, with recognisable symbols adorning the walls of a very spacious room. There was a large Christmas tree at one end, which gave even this PGM a bit of an insight into the time of year. It was a very busy room with 6 tables running lengthways, which were fully decorated for Christmas. These tables, which would easily seat 50 or 60, were populated by what appeared to be groups of families, and the PGM found the noise from many excited children intrusive but quite uplifting. What really intrigued the PGM was not the sight of a lot of waiters, but the fact that they were all men dressed in standard Masonic attire or dark suits. The PGM was about to make a quip about tables being turned when the ghost said, "Welcome to my lodge's Christmas thank you to the local community." "Has the lodge been doing this long?" asked the PGM as he dodged a long train of spray string which was being fired around the tables. "Apparently it started about 10 years ago when we moved into this building. I understand that it had been a community centre but had closed due to lack of funding. All lodges meeting here support events for the community during the year, and the brethren and their families get fully involved. The summer barbecue is good, but in terms of creating pure joy, nothing beats the Christmas party." "What about your own Christmas meeting?" asked the provincial leader, who was beginning to wonder about the shape of this province of the future. "Do you not have your own white table get-together for your spouses and guests?" "Well," said the ghost, "I've been to 3 of these parties, and I was invited before I was initiated, and I have to say, I've never heard anything about this lodge having a regular meeting in December. In any event, our families and friends are here as part of this community celebration. Although it is a university lodge, we have recruited 3 members in the last 2 years from the community because they were so impressed with our efforts on behalf of this area, they wanted to become more involved. There are a few lodges using this building, but I don't know of any formal meetings in December. The brethren enjoy the various social events which take place this month. You have to admit that there is a real feeling of happiness and togetherness for all ages at our party." PGM felt that the spirit had a good point and thought that there were many of the features of Mr. Fezziwig's ball to this evening. It looked as if both Freemasonry and its community had benefited from what seemed a major change to how lodges operated. For the brethren serving food to young and old alike, it looked like Freemasonry delivering on its core principles of helping others and making good men better. "Of course," said Brother Small, "the province's journey to where we are now was not without some bumps in the road." And seeing the quizzical look on the PGM's face, he moved across the room to a door marked private, followed by the PGM, who was a little unnerved by the fact that the 2 of them had walked by many people without apparently being seen. That was nothing to how he felt when both he and the spirit passed through the door without opening it. That's a useful trick, thought the PGM. In a similar manner to a place visited by a man from an earlier age who was looking for answers, and who was also accompanied by a ghost, the room was, and I quote, "very dark, too dark to be observed with any accuracy." "From darkness into light," said the spirit, and instantly the room was illuminated, and the PGM was surprised to see its 4 walls completely adorned by lodge banners. "How many lodges meet here?" he asked. "Oh, these are not just 4 active lodges. This collection includes those which have closed across the province since we moved into this building. My lodge has a number of members who joined when the warrant of their mother lodge was surrendered. We are lucky to have these brethren because they are really committed to the cause, but I cannot help feeling that they all missed out on the opportunity to bring about some change in their original lodges, which might have helped with sustaining membership." The PGM thought these were very reflective words from an entered apprentice, but satisfied himself with the view that such insight probably came with the role of being a ghost. "Tell me, spirit, are the visions you are showing me situations that will occur, or may come to pass. As he uttered these words, the PGM felt that they had a familiar ring to them. I am beginning to feel that my daily advancement has been satisfied, said the PGM, realising that there was much to ponder over, and that it was time he returned to his world. In an instant the PGM was in his chair in the office, and as far as he could tell, the Provincial Secretary had not noticed his return. Perhaps I briefly nodded off, and it was all a dream. He looked at the papers on membership and saw a figure he had ringed in red, and realised that it was not a dream, and that perhaps he had been offered a golden opportunity. Well, Provincial Grand Secretary, which brought the Provincial Grand Secretary back from his thoughts about that coffee. I have to say that these figures are not much of a Christmas present and are not good reading. No doubt the actions to tackle the pandemic have been essential, but the effects of the controls on Freemasonry will only become clear in the middle of the next year at the earliest. Doubtless we will have to review the effectiveness of all the membership initiatives, but I'm getting a sense that what we ought to focus on is to engage with our lodges on what the world would look like without Freemasonry. We cannot allow this steady decline to continue because many of the disadvantaged people in our country are better placed due to our support for local and national charities. And despite what some may think, society is a kinder place for having Freemasonry in its ranks. You know, Provincial Grand Secretary, whatever we do will mean more work for you and the membership team. If we actually paid you for the job you do, then I would double the salary. How generous is that? One thing is certain, whilst the festive season is here to be enjoyed, and the generous nature of many at this time of year is heartwarming, I believe that as a province we can do much more, and not just for the benefit of those who need a helping hand, but also for Freemasonry. But perhaps that is for another day. I think it's time we packed up and went home. You know, PGM, said the Provincial Grand Secretary as he clicked to close down his computer, it would be a result if in the Masonic world this province was widely recognised as keeping Christmas well. And all I can say is, may the great architect bless us, everyone. Brethren, all references to persons living, otherwise, or fictional is more than just coincidental. Anne and I send to you and your families the warmest compliments of the season. Your very good health.